The From the Bench Sports Podcast, bringing you analysis, opinion, and insight into the world of sports. With your host and founder of AccessMediaGlobal.com, Mark Janisch.
The concern that I have in Dallas, not that I need to be concerned with the Dallas Cowboys, but with the notoriety that the franchise possesses, it's probably a good thing that we talk about this just a little bit. Jerry Jones is, I think, pretty much like George Steinbrenner used to be. These owners who have a bunch of money to throw around and high-priced free agents and players, etc., they think they can manage the football or baseball operations as well. Now, this was moderately successful with George Steinbrenner, former owner of the New York Yankees in the 70s and up through the 90s. The problem is some of these owners don't let the prospective baseball or football people, in this case, do the work they need to do. Now, Jerry Jones is getting up there in age. He's 77 years old. He's probably looking at his mortality in a certain way. I'm not sure that Jerry Jones has the wherewithal to relinquish control of the Cowboys. My problem with Mike McCarthy has never impressed me as a guy who could be controlled. He's not necessarily a puppet of an organization. He's made the playoffs 9 times in his 13-year career, as I said, with 1 Super Bowl. The situation with Mike McCarthy, however, is this, is that has he really gotten the okay from Jerry Jones to actually manage the football team versus Jerry looking over his shoulder, so to speak, trying to micromanage the Dallas Cowboys. Now, they have a pretty good roster. The other thing is, Mike McCarthy has never been known, as far as his offense goes, to be a running coach. In other words, rushing. His rushing numbers have not ranked in the top 10 in the last 10 years, I believe. He's not a running coach, but he's got Ezekiel Elliott, who, by all accounts, at least from my end of things, as far as being just a casual viewer, not necessarily casual, but as an interested viewer, I guess I would say, Ezekiel Elliott needed to be given the ball more, and that didn't happen. Now, I'm not sure that firing Kellen Moore is the answer. Apparently, Kellen Moore is still debating. It's debatable as to whether he's going to stay. I mean, Mike McCarthy may retain him as offensive coordinator, but the fact of the matter is that the Cowboys beat the bottom feeders in 2019, but they couldn't necessarily beat the playoff teams they played. Now, they did play in the worst division in football. I think the winning percentage for the 2019 NFC East was something along the lines of a winning percentage of like 36%. That's the worst, actually, 436, 43.6% winning percentage. That's the worst division since 2002. That fact came from ESPN research and programming and such. I just want you guys to know that the bottom line, the proof is in the pudding. Will Jerry Jones give Mike McCarthy fuller control of the football program in Dallas? Joe Judge, Patriots wide receiver coach. Patriots wide receiver coach has association with Nick Saban and so forth as far as being a winner. But I'm not sure with some of the ownership in the Giants organization why they chose such an inexperienced coach. Jerry Jones chose not to give any college coach to try, although he's done so in the past with Barry Switzer with nice results as far as the Super Bowl championship. But the problem is that, Jerry decided to go with a football experience guy, and then Joe Judge, who has no head coaching experience, position coach, wide receivers, Patriots under Bill Belichick, he leaves. Scuttlebutt out there is that Josh McDaniel, when last we saw him as a head coach, doing terrible in Denver, decided to jilt the Buffalo Bills in favor of Frank Reich after signing a contract and not going there. The Indianapolis Colts. As far as that goes, Josh McDaniels is 50-50, apparently, according to reports coming from ESPN and other outlets here in the United States. It's 50-50 as to whether he wants to stay with the Patriots or coach the Cleveland Browns. Now, the problem with the Browns is who's going to be able to nurture and manage those egos in Cleveland between Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield, just to name a couple. Cleveland has some great talent, but unfortunately, Freddie Kitchens had a position that was above his head. So that's why he was 6-10 in 1 year and done in Cleveland. So Cleveland's got some talent. I'm not sure if Josh McDaniels believes he's the man to mold that team together, then that's totally great. I mean, really, okay? So we're also looking at Matt Rule. 7 years, okay? 7 years to coach in Carolina. Ron Rivera, hired by Washington. Now, Ron Rivera's 73-63-1 as Carolina coach. The problem, similar to Jerry Jones, you have Daniel Snyder as an owner. I don't know what it is with these owners who think they can micromanage their teams. Yeah, they cut the $1 million checks, but, Daniel Snyder needs to leave it alone. I mean, really, he needs to leave some things alone, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to go ahead and get something done. But there's a lot of work to be done in Washington, especially with Dwayne Haskins Jr. He had a few good games, but he's a youngster. I mean, he's not going to be taking selfies in the end zone when he should be kneeling down anymore, as far as that fiasco goes. But there's a lot of growth in Washington, so good luck to Ron Rivera as he brings the Redskins back from obscurity into some degree of notoriety. So we'll see. Now, Matt Rule, Baylor coach, nice enough guy, but can he go ahead and bring the changes that he needs to make? I'm not necessarily sure about that, but we're going to see. And the other issues regarding the NFL, of course, the playoffs. NFL 2019 season playoffs this weekend. The Tennessee Titans are going to be playing the Baltimore Ravens, 6-1, 5:15 p.m. Pacific Time, 8:15 Eastern Time in the United States. Check your local cable and satellite listings. That'll be on the CBS television network for those of us in the United States. Want to just say, Derrick Henry, 1,540 yards, 16 touchdowns. Now, the interesting thing is, not only did they beat the Patriots, but I was going to indicate this my last podcast, but I actually forgot to do it. But I do have some statistics for the Titans fans and things of this nature. I really believe that ball control and time of possession, and that is to say, if Derrick Henry can continue to run the ball effectively, I believe it will limit the possessions that Lamar Jackson has. Now, Lamar Jackson is kind of a newer version, kind of like Michael Vick was when he was in the league, but Lamar Jackson's biggest area of improvement has been his actual pocket passing. He actually put some work in during the offseason. He's an excellent pocket passer. Now, if he moves to the left or to the right, all bets are off. You may be taking the run-pass option, the RPO there. So you're going to see a lot of that go on. I think the key for the Ravens is going to be their special teams and defense. I do believe they're going to need at least one turnover because definitely Mike Vrabel is going to want to be managing that clock, controlling time of possession through the run game. If Derrick Henry can follow up even close to his 182 yards, then Lamar Jackson and crew might be in trouble. But I do believe the key is going to be turnovers and the Raven defense. Now, the Raven defense is quite good. They have Earl Thomas, the veteran from Seattle, fourth-round pick out of the University of Texas several years ago for the Seattle Seahawks. I think Baltimore's defense is going to win this game for them. So I'm not saying book it, but that's just an observation. We do bring opinion, analysis, and our thoughts and feelings on this podcast. This podcast can be heard on Spotify, Stitcher, and Libsyn. You can also go to my website, accessmediaglobal.com. I own it. I am the sole proprietor, and would like to just let you know that the Ravens, I think that this is going to be a very close game. I do think the Ravens will win the game. I do believe that it'll be within a 3-point spread. However, Tennessee does have a shot here based on the running game, control of the time of possession, and so forth. The San Francisco 49ers, they're going to be facing the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I got to give my props to Kirk Cousins because on this podcast and privately, I've pretty much described Kirk Cousins as a stat filler, a guy who can get a lot of yards, but he's not necessarily going to, wow anybody. But he did get a playoff win, so we got to give him credit. Even though he's something like 0-8, 0-9 on Monday Night Football, can't win in prime time, etc., etc. He's going to go to San Francisco. He's going to face Jimmy Garoppolo on Saturday, 1:35 Pacific time. Check your local cable and satellite listings wherever you might be to see that game. The Minnesota Vikings, they can play defense. Mike Zimmer, he's a very, very defensive-minded, running game-minded coach. Stephon Diggs will be available. Adam Thielen had a great game last week. He caught some beautiful balls and thrown by Kirk Cousins, making that happen for the Vikings. I do believe the Vikings are going to make this game competitive. I do believe that the 49ers, their defense is going to have to show up. They started out 8-0. They ended up being 13. I think they're 12-4, 13-3, something along that line. They have the ability to do very well. George Kittle, he's going to be critical. Now, as far as the 49ers go, they have an excellent defense. They have an excellent running game. But I think if Minnesota's defense comes alive and they get a turnover or two on this, it could make it very interesting. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo, in the games that I've seen late season, he seems a little bit jumpy. He's like Tom Brady, where you have to get some pressure on him, and you'll be able to stop him. But we will see what happens with the defensive preparation for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, if the Minnesota Vikings do happen to beat the San Francisco 49ers in San Francisco on Saturday afternoon, they will be facing the winner of Green Bay and Seattle. Now, Green Bay is in an advantageous position. 1-9 is the career record of the Seattle Seahawks in Lambeau Field. 0 for the last 8, but 1-9. Now, the running game is going to be critical for Seattle. They are down a couple of running backs. C.J. Prosise, of course, Rashard Penny, first-round draft pick out of San Diego State. Marshawn Lynch is going to be good near the goal line. He's probably going to play more this week. Now, defensively for Seattle, their defensive backfield is going to have to decide whether they want to play a zone coverage, which they normally do. Now, if they're in cover 0 with nobody back, maybe you have a spy on Aaron Rodgers, and especially with a running game with Aaron Jones for the Packers. Very strong running game for the Packers. We'll have to see about that. But the fact of the matter is, what I don't want to see from Seattle on Sunday afternoon at 3:40 Pacific time, kickoff at Lambeau Field, is a lot of cushion. Now, if you're going to play zone, there's going to be holes in that zone. We will see what happens with that. Now, I wouldn't necessarily stack the box with 8 or 9 guys as far as Seattle goes, because when you sacrifice for the running game, you're going to have openings in the middle of the football field, guaranteed on that. So I think that the performance of Aaron Rodgers is going to be critical. He has been not quite Tom Brady-esque this year, but he has been missing a lot of balls that he usually he's missing a lot of throws that he usually makes, to be honest with you. Lazard, and that crew, some of his young receivers, they're going to need to step up, because what you might see from Aaron Rodgers, in my estimation, is a lot of short-arming of balls, a lot of balls thrown into the ground. But we know what Aaron Rodgers can do. However, a lot of Green Bay fans have been living in the past and focusing on the 2010 Super Bowl. Super Bowl, I believe, was 45 they won with Mike McCarthy, who we mentioned earlier in the podcast, now in Dallas, trying to bring Jerry Jones another title. But anyway, moving right along with that, the other thing for Green Bay is the defense. The Smith boys, Ladarius Smith and that crew, they brought in the Smith boys for $50 million. So hopefully the defense will travel despite what I anticipate to be very cold weather, by the way. Excuse me. What I anticipate to be very cold weather, by the way. We will see what happens at 3:40. Now, if the Seahawks win and Minnesota wins, the NFC Championship is being held in Seattle because seed number 6 will be on the road against the higher seed number 5, Seattle. I do believe the Seahawks will win this game. Russell Wilson will find a way. If Seattle controls the time of possession, they will win this game in Lambeau Field based on the fact that they like to run the ball about 60% of the time, throw the other 40 off the play action for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, 34 touchdowns, 5 interceptions going into last week's game. He was 18 for 25. He passed for, 18 for 30. He passed for 325 yards and a touchdown last week. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, the final game that I'm going to review, just give you my thoughts on, is Kansas City. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to be playing the Texans of Houston, the Houston Texans. I'm not sure Will Fuller's going to play because of injury. I do believe that DeAndre Hopkins needs to be involved more in the first half. I think that was the downfall for Houston in the first half of their game they played last week. They did not get him involved early enough. So, and I don't know how you do this, but Andy Reid's going to have to, Bill O'Brien's going to have to figure out what he wants to eliminate as far as the weaponry. Kansas City has Travis Kelce, tremendous wide receivers, speed guys, the whole nine of it as far as that goes. Now, my concern with Kansas City is, will they bring their defense? Because we know Andy Reid's a good coach, very good coach, as far as his longevity in the league and his work with the Philadelphia Eagles in the past. He has a nice reputation, but he doesn't have necessarily a reputation as being a good defensive coach. So Kansas City is going to have to hold their own defensively against Deshaun Watson. The running game is going to be critical for the Texans, always critical in the playoffs to run the ball well. If the Texans do that, they have an opportunity to once again keep the MVP caliber Patrick Mahomes off the field. And that's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to run the ball. They're going to have to quiet that Kansas City crowd, and we will see what happens. But there are many prognosticators in the media and elsewhere who believe Kansas City will be facing Baltimore for the AFC title game. And I probably would lean toward that. I think that Kansas City will win. Kansas City will win this game, and they will go to the AFC Championship. Those are some of my observations regarding the NFL Championship. Turning to some local college basketball, the local mid-major Division I institution, the UC Santa Barbara Gauchos under Joe Pasternak, improved to 12-4 with a 63-45 win in the blue-gray rivalry. Amadou Sow had a great game. I believe he led the Gauchos with 15 points based on the statistics that I just looked at. You can look at that full report on my website at accessmediaglobal.com. So the coaching carousel continues to run, and we've looked at some NFL today. We've covered some NC2A options. I do want to also say that Monday night I'll be running the DVR because I won't be available to watch the game. But to be honest with you folks, Joe Burrow is going to probably replace Andy Dalton in Cincinnati with the number one pick in the NFL. Now, the LSU runs quite a pro-related offense. I'm not sure that they can be stopped, and Joe Burrow has accounted for one of the highest percentages of offense total, he himself, than any quarterback they've seen in a long time. But I believe in Dabo Swinney. I believe that Dabo Swinney is on a nice run. As a matter of fact, and this is not to disparage any Alabama fans out there, but I do believe Dabo Swinney might be wanting to dethrone the de facto SEC coach of coaches, Nick Saban. As far as the proof is in the pudding. Now, is it possible that Trevor Lawrence can repeat what Deshaun Watson did and what Trevor Lawrence did last year? Well, he's got an opportunity. 235, 240 pounds, 6'5" quarterback running 67 yards last week in the semifinals. Really, we're going to see Monday night. But once again, Clemson's going to need to keep the ball out of the hands of Burrow. And I don't know what the theme of this podcast is going to be, but it's basically play some defense, control time of possession, and you have a shot. Now, I believe that Clemson can win this game. Do I believe they will? Probably not. I do believe LSU will be hoisting the trophy on Monday night in New Orleans for the National Collegiate Athletic Association title. So, good luck, LSU. We're happy that this is going to be an opportunity for Dabo Swinney and Clemson to get another Okay. Dabo Swinney and Clemson to get another title. So that's happening. As far as the Lakers go, 30-7. They're going to be playing the Mavericks Friday night, and they have a date in OKC with the Thunder. Anthony Davis has a slight injury. He's day-to-day. Everything came back kind of negative, but I did mention in my column 5 things that the Lakers needed to worry about, accessmediaglobal.com under the NBA tab, by the way. 5 things that they needed to worry about. Actually, one of the 5 seems to be proven true. The fragility of Anthony Davis. He's had more back injuries and so forth, and been out with hurting hands and hurting arms. Now he landed on his backside, hurt his tailbone. I think he bruised it, to be honest with you. He's a day-to-day situation. Now, the Lakers, this is one reason why I don't believe the Lakers will win the title. The title, I believe, will be going to the Los Angeles Clippers and Doc Rivers. So, following both teams, but supporting the Clippers, I have to say the Clippers are a better team. They're more well-rounded. Now, the problem that I have with the Clippers is that they want to do the load management thing. The Clippers are not concerned regarding regular season games. Their focus is on the playoffs. And the fact of the matter is, I think Paul George and Kawhi Leonard need more practice time together to get their timing down, which doesn't seem to appear to have happened consistently or well in these last few games. The Clippers are going to be quite formidable in the playoffs, along with Jokic and Luka Doncic doing a great job in Dallas. So that's Lakers in Dallas, 6:45 on Friday. That's going to be on ESPN. Want you to see that. If you have an international broadcast, you can access international satellite. Go ahead and do it. Going to be a great night. I'll have more on the Clippers and the Lakers as we go forward here into the season. One other programming reminder here at AccessMediaGlobal.com and the From the Bench podcast. A couple months back, I had local California, Santa Barbara, California attorney Rick Prusing on the program. Michigan State alum, tremendous basketball fan, lives and dies Michigan State, go Sparty, yada yada yada. Okay, the thing is that what we decided to do. We decided over Christmas, over the New Year's Day viewing of the Rose Bowl, that we are going to bring Rick back in about February. We're going to have a roundtable to assess Michigan State's readiness for the tournament. We're going to talk about their season. They've lost Joshua Langford. How have young guys like Gabe Brown, Malik Smith, and guys like that, and Rocket Watts, among others, how have they progressed as the season has gone on? Tom Izzo and team are leading the Big Ten right now. It's a little bit close, it's a little bit early, but they are undefeated in Big Ten play at this particular time. So we're gonna bring Rick back, and we're going to discuss the Spartans once again. If you want to go back and listen to the podcast, you're welcome to. Listen at the end of this program for information about how you can support this podcast and where you can listen to this podcast. This is Mark Janish. I'm happy that you have listened today on Spotify, Libsyn, or Stitcher Radio. So happy that you're along. I want to once again thank friend of the program, Jim Sirianni, for doing yeoman's work. 22-year radio veteran. helping me with some production issues and some intro and outro issues, which you've heard at the front of this podcast, and you're going to hear at the back end of this podcast. So for right now, I'm Mark Janish. This is the From the Bench Sports Podcast. Have a great day and a great sports weekend. Go Seahawks. Go Hawks. For now, I'm Mark Janish, wishing you a very, very pleasant good day wherever you're listening in the United States and around the world. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the From the Bench Sports Podcast. You can listen to this and any other podcast episode on Libsyn, Stitcher Radio, and Spotify. If you'd like to support the From the Bench Podcast, you may go to the AccessMediaGlobal.com website and click on the Donate tab.